U.S. Central Command just announced they began a third round of strikes against Iran in response to Iranian forces attacking a Cyprus-flagged container ship in the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM says the U.S. is degrading Iran's ability to attack ships, and the strikes are being carried out at the direction of the commander-in-chief. Tom, let's go right back to you on this. Obviously, this is the perennial issue right now. No matter where we are, we talk about the Texas Senate race. This is gonna make news because we just don't know where this is from one minute to the other. It seems to be reactionary sometimes. Iran hits ships after President Trump gave them an ultimatum, and now we're hitting Iran. What happens next?
We don't know what happens next, but I will say this. There are some that believe that if we take some sort of military action, that's going to be bad for midterms for Republicans. I actually disagree with that. I think the fact that we went in the first place, so there were some that weren't happy about that. But if you are going to go in, I think most of those folks think finish the job and get it done. And these diplomatic talks, 60 days, and then we extend it, and then we're in a ceasefire, and then we get hit, and then they're saying crazy things on social media and kill Trump in the streets. I think the president needs to take action. I think he's doing that. And I think the American people will reward him for that, because I think the worst thing that can happen is just rinse and repeat for months on end and have no change.
Riley, we were on this show a couple of weeks ago, Tommy and I, and we broke news. We had the vice president come on this show, call in from being pulled away from the things that he was involved in to talk about this deal, this big plan that was going to give, I believe it was 60 days, this memorandum of understanding, working towards the deal. The entire administration seemed to be lock and step. This was a good plan and it had teeth. And here we are a few weeks later, and it feels like we're back to a month and a half ago. It feels like nothing's changed. Where do Americans sit on this? Do they feel like the administration is losing control? Do they feel like that we're playing catch up?
You know, well, and you do know this. It speaks to the instability of the Middle East specifically. I'll agree with Tommy here. I think President Trump is a man of his word. If he says he's going to do something, you better believe he is going to follow through with it. Now, you ask where Americans sit. I'll speak specifically to where Gen Z sits on this issue.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of people who are, let's say, recently college graduated or even those still in college who are kind of tired of the conversation surrounding the Middle East and the U.S. involvement, especially those, honestly, who are conservatives. I think there are a lot of Gen Z conservatives, when they say America first, they mean really America only. Is that because they don't have a great understanding of what U.S. involvement looks like overseas? Probably. I think that's a large part of it. But in speaking to my generation and how we feel about this topic, I think there's a level of exhaustion, to be honest with you. And
funny,
confusion,
Joe,
quite frankly. Confusion of where we really are. You know, we see these breaking news all the time of strikes on Iran. I feel like I see that every other day at this point. So even speaking for myself, there's a level of confusion of where we're actually at. Yeah.
You know, we're not that far apart in age here, but we do have three generations represented here, right? Yes. Gen Z, Riley talks about Gen Z. Well, they grew up with the war on terror, right? They came to adulthood in a 20-year war. You came to adulthood, Gen X.
Yes.
You know, as that war, as the Islamic radicalism became a thing. And so your generation sees a little bit differently and probably has a little bit more patience because you saw 9/11 and you saw and maybe not you specifically, but just your generation saw the bombings in Beirut, saw the USS Cole, and what radical Islamic terrorism can do if you don't take the fight to them.
It's a great point. I was in New York on 9/11. I wasn't downtown, but I could see it right from about here where I was working, and the building's on fire, and getting off on a ferry to get back to New Jersey, and then knowing that my friends were dying or had died in the World Trade Center. So, yeah, I do have a different perspective. I think Riley makes a great point, though, around the numbness and fatigue around this, because I look at oil futures, like right now, right, $71, right, a barrel, which is pretty low, right, considering it was above 100 at the beginning of this war.
Yeah.
Gallon of gas, $3.88. It was well above $4. Mm-hmm. So I think at this point, Joey, I think the American people, they're either numb or they have patience. But in the end, until the Strait of Hormuz is completely open, this is going to be a problem for Republicans in the midterms, because the longer this goes on, the more Democrats could have the argument that they're the anti-war party, and therefore they may do better in the midterms than they otherwise would if we didn't have this war happening right now.
Tommy?
But I will say to that point, and I agree with everybody here on the level of exhaustion we're at, but I think it's more exhausting to hear that we're having diplomatic talks and diplomatic talks and diplomatic talks, and then it's like, oh, they've agreed to this, that, or whatever. That's phony baloney. They don't mean anything they say, at least the people that we've been talking to.
Well, we don't know who we're talking to is
exactly,
the problem.
but I think that the fatigue comes when we keep hearing that there's some kind of a ceasefire or there's some kind of a negotiation.
Yeah.
I think being decisive, I think that to me, is a better path politically than doing the same thing over and over again and convincing people that we're getting somewhere diplomatic.
But without ground troops, how can we be decisive, Joey? I mean, you're the military guy.
There's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
I think the president favors diplomatic solutions and understands that his reputation is he has to use the big stick when it's necessary. You know, speak softly, carry the big stick. President Trump is speak loudly and carry the big stick. Either way, there has to be consequence.
Yeah.
And I think that's what President Trump is trying to balance, and it's not easy to do with folks whose ideologies surpass any convenience they could want. You can't just say, hey, just go be rich and be peaceful. That doesn't work for them. The big takeaway from here, we've turned Tommy into a war hawk, and we'll stick with that.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.